On with the show. Yeah. Hello. I am back. I'm back and I'm better than ever. Focus, focus. Hello, Edmund, Nancy, Bob, Jess Kerrigan, Robert Martin, Edmund Red, Peter Rahill, Darren Moss, Lane Bell and Shrek, John Pearson, Giovanni Lanza, Darren Fletcher, Bob Gunnerfeld, I think he said hello to, Jesse J. Peck, Dean Turner, Jan Weilage, Martin Gravel. Hello, everybody. So, yeah, I got a few more emails sent me from people that said, stop with the banter. I don't know if they meant the banter on yesterday's show with Stephen Memel. Man, I'm glad he's coming back next week to... it felt like there was so much more that we could have covered, but it's a very, very, very deep subject, and he clearly knows what he's doing. I want to start today's show out by addressing an email that Member Services got yesterday, I believe. Does it have a date? No, it doesn't have a date. Anyway, it's from a gentleman in Quebec or somewhere in Canada. And he's a relatively new member, having just joined some months ago. And he has a few questions which I've answered before on other shows many, many times. It's answered on the website. And it's funny that he's asking the questions after he joined. My guess is maybe he got a return and that, caused him to ask these questions. So I'm going to answer his questions. Then we're going to move on to talk about a topic that John Pearson brought up to me the other day about libraries taking writer's share. And I'm going to talk about that at a little bit of length. So the first question from this gentleman, he says, I just joined Taxi and have a few questions. How many Taxi members are there, really? Well, I never actually disclosed that number, but I'll tell you it's in the thousands. And people always ask this question because they want to know how much competition is there? And the rest of his questions indicate to me that that's what he's wondering about. So I'm going to address that in a minute. But years ago, I used to tell people how many members that we had, and people would do the math and multiply it times $300 a year and go, oh my gosh, Michael Laskow is a multi-millionaire. That guy must be rolling in dough. The one that really upset me was the person that said that I must go home and roll around in $5 bills every night, laughing to myself, which is not the case. For the submissions, the $5 submission fees, it's basically a wash with what we pay the screeners. So, when we created the $5 submission fee back in the very early days of Taxi in 1992, the submission fee was simply to keep people from going berserk and sending every single song or instrumental they had for every single listing. But now, to directly respond to this gentleman, how many members does Taxi have, really? I don't disclose that number because people do the math and they don't think about, people that renew at $100 off or people who got Taxi when it was on sale. They don't think about our overhead, so it causes them to just go berserk and start multiplying numbers that aren't even real. I wish they were real. I wish I was a multimillionaire, but I'm not. Is there a way to determine how much competition there are for a given submission? So that's what tells me why he wanted to know how many members there are, because he apparently isn't aware that there is no such thing as competition. Whoa, a lot of activity going on there in the chat room. Anyway, there is no competition. When you submit to a Taxi listing, it doesn't matter if only 5 other people submitted or 500 other people submitted, because you're not competing against them. How could the screeners remember what they listened to 2 hours ago or 5 hours ago or a day ago? And nowhere in Taxi's history on the website, in any of the literature that we publish, in any articles written about us, nowhere does it say you are competing against other members, and you're not. You are competing against the quality bar. Is your piece of music really good and worthy of being heard by the person running the listing and asking for music? And number two, does it fit what they're asking for? So, yeah, as I've mentioned on the show before, we've had situations where we've had maybe, I don't know, let's say on a huge listing, the listings asking for percussive stuff, especially the ones that you say any kind of percussion tracks that would be good for TV commercials. We'll get hundreds of submissions for those. And let's say, I think there was one we got 700 or 800 for, and 40% of them got forwarded. So it was hundreds of forwards. That's a rare circumstance, and obviously we don't want to put the person who requested the music into shock by sending them whatever 40% of 700 is. What is that, 280 tracks? So what we'll do is reach out to them and say, wow, man, this listing was really popular. We got a lot of great music. We've finished screening it, and we've got 280 pieces of music to send you. Would you prefer that we send them to you in several batches that are kind of bite-sized, manageable batches, or do you want them all at once? And inevitably or invariably, depending which part of the English language you're going to use, they will say, send it to me in bite-sized chunks. So let's say we had 280. It's a fictional number, but kind of a good guess for a whopper of a listing with a lot of forwards. We might break that up into 4 batches of 70 each, because they can go through 70 a day and go, I like it, I don't like it, I like it, I don't like it. So there you go. So there's that. What's the average number of members that apply in the listings? I think what he's asking is what's the average number of submissions? And I've spoken about this before on the show as well, which is there really isn't an average number, because it could be something, I'm trying to think, something rare that we get. If somebody asks for Bollywood music, not too many people make Bollywood music. Not too many people will take the time, to do like a big Bollywood production. Use a lot of time and effort. So if we run a Bollywood instrumental listing, we might get, 67 submissions. We might get 14. If we run a listing asking for country hits for a country megastar, we might get 400 or 500 submissions. So there is no average. Put it this way, we could total up the number of submissions in a month and divide by the number of listings and give an average number, but it really wouldn't tell the real story. People have said, well, why don't you publish how many, when I go to make a submission, why isn't there a tally showing that you've got X number of submissions so far? And there are a few reasons for that. Number one is we tend to get the biggest chunks of submissions for any given listing the day it comes out, because that's the day that people see it in the email, and they, a certain number of them go, I've got it, and they submit that day. Then there are other people that see that and favorite it and go back to it and start working on music, and they don't submit excuse me, they generally don't submit until the last moment. If you were to sit here and watch the back end of our website, where all the database stuff goes on, you can just see the number of submissions going up as we get closer to the deadline. It's amazing sometimes on the really popular listings, how, we might get an extra 100 or 200 on a whopper listing, like a big country listing or a big, generic percussion for TV commercials listing. We may get another 100 or 200 submissions in the last hour before it closes. So again, there's just no way to give you an average. Are the companies, he also asks, are the companies, labels / people who are looking for music only looking on Taxi? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It all depends. I mean, if a country megastar is looking for music for his or her next album, they're going to reach out to every publishing company and every songwriter they know on Music Row. Everybody in Nashville will know that, that Faith Hill is looking for one more single for her next record. So we could get that listing, but so do a bunch of other people. At the other end of the spectrum, it could be a situation where we get a request for Bollywood. Let's go back to Bollywood for a second. It could be a library that we work with all the time, and we know the people that run it very well, and we check in with them. We do, like, every 10 days to 2 weeks. Hey, you looking for anything else? And they might give a glance at their catalog and go, I had a request the other day for Bollywood, and I went in there. We only had 4 Bollywood tracks, so yeah, I can use some Bollywood. Do they put that request out to a bunch of other places? Probably not. And somewhere in the middle of the spectrum might be that a library is looking for light, emotionally upbeat, acoustic instrumental tracks. I would say most of the time library listings don't go to other services like taxi. We do monitor the other services, but every now and then we will see a listing that appears on taxi appearing elsewhere. There's no law against that. There aren't very many instances of it. We publish about 100 listings a month on average, and I would say once or twice a month I'll see stuff that goes out elsewhere. Sometimes I get a little upset by that. Not that we ask the companies we work with for an exclusive, but I see them also publishing the listing on services that I personally know are maybe a little less than reputable in the way they operate. There have been, and there still are, a couple of services where they split the submission fees with the listing company. So it's kind of a good deal for a listing company to say, yeah, I'm going to run this listing with XYZ, or Brand X as I like to call them, because let's say they get 500 submissions in at $5 a piece, and all I have to do is go blink, 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 listen, 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 listen. To what degree they listen, we don't know. They're not giving feedback. So it's pretty easy to listen to 10 seconds and move on. And let's say they got 100 submissions, that generates $500 in revenue. And now the listing company gets $250 for ticking off some radio buttons that on a computer database that they've listened. So it's really easy money. Even though that's the case, and I'm frankly surprised that more of the listing companies don't work with those guys, but I think that they realize that they're maybe a little less than reputable, and they really don't want people to know that they're working with those companies. So I would say for the most part, the vast majority of our listing companies that work with us don't list with our competitors, but I have seen cases. Okay, and the last question from this gentleman is, I'm trying to understand this, if they're not looking elsewhere for music and they're only using taxi, what's the ratio of selections that were taxi members to those who were not for a typical listing? I'm a little confused. I think what he's asking, maybe, and I misunderstood it the first time, is that if it's not exclusive to taxi, what is the ratio of selection? So in other words, the music that they pick, how much of it comes from taxi members and how much of it comes from any other sources? Well, again, that depends. If it's a music supervisor looking for a song for an independent film, let's say, it's conceivable that music supervisor might reach out to 4 or 5 or even 10 music libraries and taxi and or one of our competitors. They could look a bunch of different places. So, basically, I'm trying to phrase this the right way so that it makes the most sense. There's no guarantee when taxi forwards music to somebody that they're absolutely going to take something from a member. We could forward, let's say we got 250 submissions, and we forward 25 of those. 10% of them meet the quality bar and the stylistic match, okay? And we forward those 25 things. the person on the receiving end is not obligated to use any of them. And he or she might listen to it and go, wow, this is really good. And that's really good. And that's really good. Wow, I'm glad Taxi sent me this stuff. But the stuff that I've listened to, even though I thought it was really good, just didn't work with the picture that I'm working on, didn't work in the scene, so therefore I can't use any. There may be times where we forward 25 things and they pick 6 or 7 that they think all potentially could work. And they watch it against picture, and maybe 3 of them all work really well, but the music supervisor may not be the final decider, in air quotes. So what they do at that point is they're going to play it for the director or the producer or somebody, and that person could say, I like this one, or I like that one, or I don't like any of them. So there is no real math that can be done. There's no way to like game the system to improve your chances. Like, I'm only going to submit to listings that have a low number of submissions. It doesn't matter. If it's got a lot of submissions, you're not competing. If we forwarded a lot of stuff, they may or may not find something that works with picture. Remember, it's not about is it the greatest song or is it the greatest instrumental track. It's about is it the best one for this use that I've got. Does it fill the need? Let me catch up on what you guys are saying. Oh, man. I love you guys. Ann House says, you had an idea, busted your butt to build an ethical business and help thousands of people. If you make a few $1 million by the time you're done, I'll be the first to congratulate you, Michael. Thank you, Ann. Very, very nice. Oh, yeah, somebody mentioned, when we run listings for drones, we get a ton of submissions for that because everybody can make a pretty good drone. And we forward a lot of drones, and we always feel sorry for the people that requested the drones because they're painful to screen. I mean, it's tough. When you hear something that's good in the first few seconds, you've got to listen all the way through. With a regular track that's got some rhythm going on and is not a drone, you can kind of look at the waveform and tell visually in a split second if there's a developmental arc. Does it build? Does it drop back down? Does it build up? Does it have a big finish in the form of a stinger? You can see that stuff and know whether or not you want to proceed with listening to the full thing based on it has an arc, which is something they're usually listening for. But in the case of a drone shouldn't have an arc. It's got to lay there like a lox, and so you've got to listen to the whole thing because there might be very little rhythmic or tonal movement in a drone, but it's all about, does it make your hands feel clammy? Does it make you possibly, depending on the type of drone that's been asked for, does it make you feel like there's a sense of danger? Could be there's a sense of wonder, impending doom. There are a lot of things that drones can do, but you generally have to sit there and listen start to finish if the first few seconds are tantalizing. Sorry if I keep looking over the camera. I see a squirrel out there getting up on its haunches by my tomato plant. Okay, Windchime says, Taxis is only one service providing songs to the library or that music supervisor. They may be getting songs from other sources as well. That's true, they may. There are plenty of times when they're not, but I think I've laid those out pretty clearly already to you guys. Let me scroll down. Technically, though, if a music supervisor asks for only 15 songs and Taxi has 25 good songs, and they have to be whittled down. In this case, we are competing with fellow members. Robert Orzechowski, I can tell you that rarely happens. Rarely. And when it does happen, what they'll say is, if it's like a big-time music supervisor looking for, a song that's going to be placed in a $75,000 TV commercial, they'll say, send me only your very best, like 3-ish. Rarely do they say only 3. They'll say, like 3 or 3-ish or a handful. And in that case, what we do sometimes, not 100% of the time, but oftentimes, if we find a bunch of stuff that we think is really, really great, we may pick the 3 or 4, the handful, that we think are absolutely, the most likely to satisfy that need. But there's a bunch of other stuff that we think, it's like if the 3 best are A pluses, we may have 9 more that are A almost pluses. They're really friggin' good. And like I said, it's not a matter of good or great oftentimes, most of the time. It's actually, will it fit in that commercial or in that scene? So what we'll do is we will annotate the group of stuff that we send out, the batches we call it. We put them in Disco, and we'll create a list that says the first 3 are our top picks based on what you're looking for, but these other 7 were also super strong, and we think that they're all contenders. So, you could just listen to the first 3, and usually what will happen is if they like what they hear in the first 3, and maybe they're waffling and going, I don't know that I found, these are all great, and they're all potentially great for the scene, but nothing lit me up and went, there's the one. They would most likely listen to the other 7 that are below it on the list. So there you go. So I hope that answers all the questions for that gentleman. I hope he's watching. Wow, the chat got very quiet all of a sudden. Either I'm the most fascinating person in the world or we're having a technical issue. Hopefully I'm the most fascinating person in the world, and it's not a technical issue. All right. So somebody say hello, so I know the chat is working and everything is fine and dandy. And I'm going to move on to the next topic, which John Pearson brought to my attention. Something that I've known about for years, but he called me Sunday and was concerned about this, and for good reason. So anybody there? Because I'm not seeing that chat moving. It's so weird. Nothing going on in that chat. Wow. Let me refresh. Oh, I think Liz is calling. Somebody's calling. Ah, JP says everybody's still there. It's funny, the chat has just died on me. It's just sitting there. Chat is active. We can hear you. All right. Hi, Deb. My wife is watching. Aw, I'm flattered. All right. Well, I'm getting so many texts, I'm going to spend the whole time watching my phone. All right. This is weird today. Let me fire the chat back up. Oh, please stop texting. Okay. Stop texting everybody at the office, please. Let me go in and solve this problem by going back into YouTube, copying the link one more time. See, this is the kind of stuff that scares the crap out of me for doing the road rally. YouTube Studio. Okay, I'm going into YouTube Studio. I'm going to videos. I'm going to live. I'm going there. A lot of clicks now that YouTube updated their stuff. Okay, there they are again. Spitwads flying everywhere. Oh man, the teacher leaves the room for a minute and you guys go berserk. That's how that works, huh? That is so weird today. I hope it's a YouTube thing. Okay, I'm back. Hello, everybody. Glenn Lett says, what do you think about a listing for documentary on Michael's backyard called Michael Laskow's Animal Kingdom? There you go. All right. So, Let me get rid of my face down there so I don't have to see me. Um, okay, there are more and more production companies that produce, and this is mainly regarding reality TV, but not entirely. Do you guys remember some period, some time ago, maybe 6 months ago, or 8 months ago, or 9 months ago? Can't remember, but it was some months ago, that the Discovery Network announced that they were going to move to a direct licensing model, which means that they would pay content creators, music creators, composers, songwriters. They would pay you directly and not go through a music library. And the reason they wanted to do that is under a direct licensing model, they don't they don't do licensing agreements with ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC. So there are no back-end performance royalties paid through the PROs to you guys. But you might get a nice little chunk of money up front for that use. So on its face, that sounds pretty good. But it's a slippery slope, I believe, and many others in the industry believe that it's a slippery slope, because if more and more people, especially somebody as big as Discovery with all the different brands and networks that they have under their umbrella, if they were to go to that direct licensing model all the way across the board, then at some point they could just arbitrarily say, okay, we're not going to give you $100 per placement in these shows anymore. Now we're going to make it $50. And plenty of people who are very desirous and maybe new and a little like, I don't care what they're paying, man. I just want to get my foot in the door. I want to be able to show my family and friends, hey, look, I got a piece of music in this TV show. They may do it for 50. And then maybe next year the entity knocks it down to $25 per placement. And there are always going to be people who will take that number because they value being able to say my music is in a TV show more than they value that other $25 or other $75 they might have gotten. They may not even really understand what direct licensing is, and then at some point go, holy crap, I didn't realize I'm not getting any back end on this. So thankfully, enough people had a fit about this, and the Discovery Network backed down and decided not to do it. So that's one issue. The other issue is that there are a bunch of TV production companies out there that are not... they became aware of how much money can be made in aggregate from the music that's used in the shows they're putting out there. And they look at it like, hey man, I'm putting these shows out there, making all these musicians money and making the production music libraries and licensing companies money. I want some of that action. So then they hit up the library and they say, hey, right now we're getting Zippo every time we use a piece of music. So what we'd like to do is we would like you to give us some of the publisher share. Now remember, every publishing dollar is divvied up. It's almost like it's $2, but think of it as, oh man, wish I had a paper plate, but I don't. So think of it as a pie chart. And right now, half of the pie chart is the writer's share, and the other half of the pie chart is the publisher's share. So you, under normal circumstances, and basically throughout the entire history of the industry, and hopefully going forward as well, you get 100% of half of that pie. That's the writer's share, and that stays with you forever. That's how you make your money on the back end from your performance royalties through ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, or any of the foreign PROs as well. So the other half of the pie chart, which is the publisher's share, typically goes to the library. So they've got 100% of that half, you've got 100% of your half, and if there's $1 made, you each make 50 cents. If there are $100 made, you make half of that, they get $50 as well. So now the production companies are getting wise to the fact that there's a lot of money made in aggregate. If a typical reality TV show that is on MTV, let's say, or anywhere, it doesn't matter where it is, typically they would use somewhere between 60 and maybe as many as 100 different instrumental cues. Some of them they might use for 45 seconds, some might be 2 seconds, some might be 12 or 13 seconds, just all over the place. The length of time that it's used in the circumstance, like is it featured music, is it background, all those things go into the little weird formulas that the PROs use to calculate how much money you're going to make. But you get half, the library gets half. So now the production companies are going to the library saying, you need to share your half with us. In some cases, they're saying, we want 100% of the publisher's share. And the library's going, holy crap, what am I in business for? Because that's my sole source of income, is my half, my half of the total publishing dollar. In other words, my 100%. Oh my gosh, that squirrel is climbing up my tomato plant having lunch. Ooh, bad squirrel. Anyway, I need to start working with the drapes closed. I can't handle this. I've been nurturing those tomatoes. Anyway, back to the topic at hand, because some people don't like my banter. If they could see what's going on right now in that tomato plant, they would be bantering too. Oh well. There you go. I can't even hear that, but I can see the meters moving, so I know somebody was laughing out there. Anyway, a slingshot perhaps, more like a shotgun. Oh, my wife would kill me. Anyway, so now that with the production companies asking for half of that amount of the publisher's share, or maybe 100% of the publisher's share, if they all do it, that means the libraries are going to get half as much money or no money. So they have two choices. They can either be driven out of business, or they can knock on your door and say, look, I feel terrible asking for this, but we're getting screwed out of our half or 100% of the publisher share. The only way we can continue to do business is if you split your writer share with us. Now, the writer share traditionally, for as long as I can remember, which is like an hour ago, but no, I mean, for as long as I've been in the business, the writer share is sacrosanct. Nobody gets it but the writer or writers, right? So this is a problem, and this is what John Pearson called me for on Sunday, and Pearson is one of the very few people, by the way, that can call me on a Sunday or text me on a Sunday. Don't the rest of you do that? I actually try and take like half of Sundays off, so, but I didn't mind, because this was a very serious topic, and I could tell John was upset. So we spent 42 minutes on the phone talking about it, and it was a good conversation. Unfortunately, I hear this popping up more and more frequently. I would say in the last 5 years, which is about how long this has been going on, as far as I'm aware, that is happening a little more frequently than it used to. It will certainly drive the smaller libraries out of business if it really grabs a hold. Maybe won't affect the bigger libraries for some time to come, because they've got a lot of money coming in from, if it's a huge library, like, the Universal Music umbrella of libraries, are probably like 50 or 100 libraries under one roof. They're going to have income coming in forever. And if the deals were done, I believe, if they're grandfathered in, if your music is in a big library, even a mid-sized library, and your deal was that you get 100% of the writer's share, I think they've got to honor that. They could probably ask you, he's now moving to another tomato plant. All right, Deb, you may not, Deb, don't come home from work. My wife's at the office. I'm at the house. Don't come home from work at 6 o'clock tonight, Deb. You might want to stay a little longer. There may be a squirrel relocation program going on in the backyard. Anyway, so that's where it is. We have had libraries that have approached us about running listings where they would be asking for writer's share, and we routinely say no to them. We have made an exception once or maybe twice in 28 years of doing business. One of those companies we know to be very reputable. We know the people. We know that it's actually kind of a small but very potent library. And they get a lot of placements. It's not one you're probably going, oh, I know who that is. You probably don't, but it's somebody that we know really well. They're very good guys. They are themselves composers. And believe me, they hate even asking about this. So they structured their deal. And we've only run a few listings for them because we're a little squeamish about this issue. But because we know them and we like them and we know that they're reputable, they don't have many shows that they work with that present that deal to them where the production company or the show gets half of the money or all the publisher share, half of the publisher share. But sometimes they do. They work with a couple of shows that are like that. So their deal, basically, their contract reads, if we have a library where they're going to take some of the publisher share, all the publisher share, then you, and you meaning the creators, the writers, the composers, and us, the library, are just going to split 50-50 on any money comes in, which means a 50-50 split on the writer share. Now, it's a non-exclusive catalog. So I would say, 98% of the time the music that you put in their catalog could go out to many other shows where that's not going on. So would I do that deal with them? Yeah, knowing that it's a very rare thing, but it does happen and they're a very reputable company and they feel the pain like you feel the pain. And they're saying, hey, look, if we have to bend over and take it, that we will do it arm in arm with you. And let's just leave it at that. Oh, now we're talking about squirrels that taste just like chicken. Yeah, they actually eat squirrels in many states around the country. We won't be eating any squirrels at our house. Dave Merkel says, be sure to have a spiritual moment akin to a Mississippi squirrel revival before relocating him or her to their new eternal home. Did I know that there were TV ads playing today before your Taxi Quarantini episode came on? No, I don't see them. I did not know that. Maybe I'll have Liz talk to Bria and see if there have been some setting changes. Things have been a little squirrely ever since YouTube changed their stuff. So maybe, I don't know. You guys would know better than I. Do the live episodes have commercials during the live show typically? Have you seen TV commercials prior to the start of the show ever? Yeah, JP, John Pearson says, I've sold copyrights before, but have always been able to retain the writer's share. Just depends on the song and library. Yeah, there are companies that will do a buyout where they buy out the master and they buy out the copyright, but you keep the writer's share. Nancy Colell, Michael June. Oh, I answered that one already. No ads usually. Liz says she's going to check with Bria. Michael McGraw says he's not getting notices anymore when the show goes on the air. Damn, YouTube. Greg Carrozza was offered a deal where he basically sold half of his writer's share for $100 up front. Some people might do that deal. It might not be a terrible deal because, look, there are a lot of placements that may not even generate in total, in aggregate, over a period of a year. With little short placements in shows without a big audience on networks that aren't huge, you might not generate $100 in a year. You might generate $100 over several years or many years. And if it's a non-exclusive library and you can take that same piece of music, oh no, you had to sell half your writer's share. So Greg, was that half your writer's share in a non-exclusive deal? Or no, it had to be exclusive, right? Yeah, Rick Cabot Podmore, what you're talking about, artists do receive advances, you mean composers or songwriters. However, everything is a recoupable expense. If we're still talking about the publishing world, yeah, but that's a typical like record industry side of the industry publishing deal. A classic publishing deal. Forget about placing cues in reality shows. Forget about music libraries. For the moment, act like they don't exist. So back in the day, and this still does happen on the record side of the industry, I write a song, I Love You, Deborah, and I love you, fill in the blanks. And Warner Chappell Music hears my stuff and says, we would like to have you as a staff writer at Warner Chappell. So here's the deal. It used to be typical that you would get, if you were kind of an unknown writer, sometimes it's a writer-artist thing, and that might generate more because you've got an album coming out, so they know there's a stronger probability of making money. But typically, if it's just purely a songwriter, they would offer a deal that would be like years ago, 10 years ago, they would say, we're going to give you a $100,000 advance against future royalties. You are going to do what's called a co-publishing deal with us, which means that you keep 100% of the writer's share. I put powder on my nose today. It's tickling. You keep 100% of the writer's share, and we are going to give you a $100,000 a year advance for some period of years. Usually it's like 3 years. And in exchange for that, you are going to give us a 50% interest in the publisher share. So you're giving up 25% of your whole pie, publishing pie, all right? So now you have to produce or write 12 songs that meet that publishing company's bar. You have to turn in 12 songs in a year. And you turn those in, they have the option of saying, not good enough. Or if you co-write with somebody else, then let's say you only co-write with a partner, then you would have to give them 24 songs that meet their quality bar in a year because your interest is half of what it would be if you were a solo writer. So they've advanced you that money, and now let's say, and their job is to pitch that music. They do what's called casting. Oh, this would be great for Ariana Grande. This would be great for Taylor Swift, whomever. And they knock on those doors because they have relationships with the managers, the producers, the label A&R people, and they try and get them, their artists, to cut your song. And if they do, and it blows up and it's a big hit, then they're getting 25% of the total publishing dollars generated by the hit that you wrote. Seems pretty fair because they advanced you that $100,000 a year. But remember that the money you're making doesn't go right into your pocket because you've basically been advanced or loaned $100,000 a year. So you will have had to earn $100,000 with your 3/4 of the pie in order, once you break that 100 grand, you move past that. If you have a mega hit and you're making a lot of money, then you start getting more money on top of the 100 grand that was advanced. So there you go. Robert Orzechowski has a funny one. As Hall & Oates saying, I can't go for that. There you go. They should retitle that song, with that spelling. John Pearson says, I've done vocal song compilations, 10 plus songs with upfront dollars, and they own the song, but I still get the back end from BMI and half of the sync fee. Yeah, that's kind of a typical deal. A lot of the production music libraries, some really good ones that we work with that many of our members have signed with and been quite successful getting music placed through them, have done deals where they got no money up front and the library gets 100% of the publisher's share, 100% of the master. You get no money up front, but it is a 50-50 split. So if they license it to a drama on NBC, an hour-long drama might typically have a sync fee, which is an upfront payout somewhere in the $2,500 to $5,000 range, typically around $3,500-ish dollars. So then you get half of the sync fee and they get the other half of the sync fee. Sometimes the libraries that do give you some money up front to buy out the master and the publisher's share, they may get to keep 100% of the publisher's share down the road because you've already been paid something up front. So that's typically how it works. There are always exceptions, but those are typical things. Darren Moss, a repost of a compliment. Oh, then I shall read it twice, Darren. Thank you. I sent a song I'm working on for a custom critique. Got the feedback in 48 hours. You were lucky. Screener 416 was extremely helpful. It's just the best service. Thanks, 416. I have no idea who 416 is. I know very few of the screeners by their numbers. If anybody told me, they'd probably have to kill me. But you know, we don't have any lame screeners. And quite frankly, at very few points in our history have we had any lame screamers. And that's why we have quality control. Our head screener actually goes and kind of thumbs through every one of those critiques that goes out the door. And if they see anything that sets off any kind of bell, then they'll spend more time looking at it, and if they see, and they'll go in and correct it, and if they see a persistent problem with the screener not giving enough feedback, or maybe sounding, sometimes it sounds like they've got an attitude on paper. Usually the bigger the screener, kind of, the more important they've been in the industry. Like if we have somebody that's a publisher in Nashville that's trying to make a little extra money on the side and they're screening a taxi, they might be short and sound a little curt on paper or on computer, if you will, because that's the way they work in Nashville. They'll listen to 30 seconds of a song, maybe even 10 seconds, and not even bother going to the chorus if they don't hear an intro that's like completely wonderful in every way. They won't go any further. So they'll just go, no, doesn't work for me. Doesn't work for this project. So sometimes our screeners have used language like that. It doesn't translate well to our members. So that's why the head screener does the quality control to make sure that their tone of voice at least sounds friendly and helpful. Or Zachowski says, a big shout out to Angela, the head screener. She's awesome. Yes, she is. She is universally loved by every member of the staff, and she does a really good job. Dan Weber says, and I'm, a lot of times I don't read the whole comment before I blurt it out, so I hope Dan's right. He says, remember, libraries are not out to screw you. Any library like that will build a bad reputation. Nothing's a secret in this business. So true, Dan. Honestly, there are libraries that I've met over the years that may be a little incompetent, or it's a little early in the game and they don't have everything buttoned up, not crossing all their T's, dotting all their I's yet, and they have been known to make mistakes. But they're not like evil and trying to screw anybody, because it is a small business. We all kind of know each other, and it's very, very easy for everybody else in the industry to find out if you are trying to screw people. Lane Bell and Shrek says, Michael, which would you say is the better financially way to go? Writing a hit song for an artist or going the film and TV sync idea? That's a great question, Lane, and the answer is do both. I've been known to say this many, many times over the years. Everybody would love to have a hit song under their belt. Who wouldn't want to have a mega hit out there that you could point to and hang a gold record on the wall and your family and friends be proud of you, you make a ton of money? The odds of that happening are really, really, really slim. They just are. Even if you're a pro writer, and JP will back me up on this, there are a bunch of people. My dear friend Ralph Murphy once told me at any point in time, there are 9,000 people in Nashville, 9,000 songwriters who've had a charted hit. Maybe he might have even said a top 10 hit at some point in their career. So that's your competition in Nashville. The odds of you making enough money on a series of hits is very low. However, new writers do break through. They've got to come from somewhere. There are always new writers bubbling up. Like that, I did a graphic, or not a graphic, but whatever, you get the idea. I did it. So there are always new writers bubbling up, and they do have to come from somewhere. And we've had two instances in Taxi's, lifetime where brand new writers ended up getting publishing deals, ended up getting a song cut, one by Kenny Rogers, another one by an unknown band on an unknown label, and both of those became number one hits. So all that said, chances are you're not going to have a hit, you're not going to make a fortune, and the chances are even greater that you're not going to have a second, third, fourth, or 50th hit. So if I were a songwriter, what I would do would be paint houses by day and paint masterpieces by night. And what I mean by that is both of those jobs require the use of paint, a canvas, so to speak. One canvas might be the outside of a house, one canvas might actually be a canvas. And you also use brushes, and you also learn how to blend colors, and you learn how to do the right kind of stroke. One of them, which is painting houses by day, is the music library business. That generates small amounts of money, but if you do it enough and do it long enough, over a period of 5 to 10 years, you'll start making tens of thousands of dollars a year, and the money keeps coming in, and the more music you have out in those libraries, it becomes cumulative. So you could reach a certain point, like some of our members, like Matt Vanderboe. The guy's got 4,000 pieces of music in various libraries, and he's done all that in like 8 years or something. And he's definitely over the six-figure line at this point. If he stopped making music tomorrow, he would continue to make money from the music that is in those 10 or 15 different catalogs with different libraries that he works with. Eventually, it would start to go downhill because newer, fresher music is in those catalogs. But you keep making money, and it is cumulative. So the trick is to keep feeding the pipeline so that you are one of the people generating that newer, fresher music on top of your older music that sits in those catalogs. So that way you've got guaranteed income ostensibly for life. If you're a hit songwriter and you have a number one hit, you might get a nice chunk of income, mostly from your performing rights organization, because they're no longer really, pressing up CDs or vinyl. I mean, a little bit, but, let's get real. The amount of money you make, frankly, I don't even understand how mechanicals. I know that Harry Fox Agency collects a mechanical fee when your music is used in certain ways on the internet. The bottom line, it used to be that you got 9 point some cents every time somebody pressed a CD, made a cassette, good sound effect, made a piece of vinyl. You got, as the songwriter, 9 point some cents, just under a dime per unit. So if you wrote a song on a Fleetwood Mac record, like Rumors, that sold 40 million copies, and you got 10 cents, I'm rounding up a little bit, you would make, $4 million. I think I got that right. So you would make, 40 million times 10 cents, you would make $4 million as a songwriter, just on the mechanicals. And because you wrote that song that was also a number one single from Fleetwood Mac that got played a ton that year and a ton every other year, still getting played all over the world on classic rock stations, on pop stations, in grocery stores, through the speakers in the ceiling, you are going to continue to make money from that. But those are really rare circumstances. So, paint houses by day, paint masterpieces by night. Use the house painting to support your endeavors to write your grand opus that's going to make you a fortune someday. And you know what? Doing the day-to-day grind, if you will, of cranking out in your home studio, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It could literally be a pretty decent laptop with a $150 USB mic, $69 little MIDI keyboard, $150 interface, and you can get cheaper ones, but I'm thinking right now of the Focusrite Scarlett, for like about $150, I think. and a bunch of software. You can have a pretty nice home studio that makes record quality recordings if you learn how to master the gear and master your ear for EQ and setting limiting, compression, reverb, how to mix, all that stuff. So you will be getting better by doing it the daily grind, and that will help you crank out better demos for your grand opuses, or opie as I like to call them, that you're going to pitch to the major acts that are on the charts. So there you go. As any shrink would tell you, it's 5 o'clock and our time is about up. I'm glad this episode was informative. Really, we're hanging out. The Taxi Quarantini happy hours are really more about being social and hanging out and talking about topics that range from squirrels eating tomatoes to my favorite topic, which is fishing, to anything that you guys want to talk about. But I love the fact that I am able to educate you guys along with having some fun and sometimes sharing a drink with you guys. So that's it. Thanks for hanging out. Thank you for being well behaved in the chat room while things were melting down on YouTube. Great to see everybody. And we will be back here tomorrow at the very same time for another exciting episode of Taxi's Quarantini Happy Hour. Thank you, guys. Good to see you. And that's right, no fish were injured in the making of today's program.